Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and on this week's Field Friday segment, I thought we'd talk about what we have going on all out in these cornfields right now. There's various things that are going on, and we're getting close to time where we've got some fungicide and some late season management decisions to make here, and I thought we'd touch on a few things that we're seeing out in the corn right now. Obviously, we feel a lot better about our corn crop now. Most of the area has gotten at least a decent rain. Several areas have gotten really nice rains or multiple rains, but things are looking pretty good right now. All things considered, for what this corn went through in June and early July, it looks pretty good actually. So we're coming up on some decision time here. So what are we seeing out in the cornfields? Well, yeah, there's some insects out here. Don't really see much for diseases showing up or anything just yet, but we're starting to get into this phase where we're starting to get some silks and some tassels out here. We'll get some fields that are probably more fully tasseled here as we move on here. And we need to know what's going on out here if we're going to make some management decisions, make sure we make the right ones. Obviously, the thing that we're probably looking at priority-wise is this is getting towards fungicide time. With the commodity markets the way they are, I think we really strongly need to consider some fungicide applications, especially on our fields that look pretty solid. Yes, it's a costly application, but I really think it's something that we really need to consider. We do have a pretty good yield potential yet. We don't have the top end that we probably did given what we had to go through in June and some things. But, you know, when we're looking at, you know, this $5 plus corn, it doesn't take as many bushels to pay for stuff, and I think we really want to consider managing accordingly. You know, where we're at here in Northwest Iowa, we're probably not in as big of a disease area. We see fungicide responses probably somewhat from the crop plant health aspect that we're helping. This plant's going to be going through a lot of stress here, trying to pollinate maybe 500-600 kernels in a lot of cases, trying to feed that here in the interim. This is a really critical phase, and if we can take some stress off of that corn and the fungicides that we're, you know, looking at the plant health side of things, we'll do that. And then, I don't know, it feels like maybe we're in a little different weather pattern. Who knows? Maybe we'll be wet from now on and have more moisture around and more humidity, and that could lead to some more diseases coming in. We've had a lot of south winds. I'm wondering if we're going to have some rust spores that have blown in that we might see starting to develop. You know, we just don't know where we're at. If we do go back and stay warm, warmer than average, if we get back into that pattern, that'll make this corn feel like it's farther south maybe, and we might see some gray leaf spot being a factor. If we do cool off and stay damp, northern corn leaf blight, something that's always in the you know, in the potential. So fungicides are definitely something to consider there. Probably you know, you get what you pay for with fungicides, like a lot of other things. There are cheap fungicides out there, single mode of action type stuff. I think I would shy away from those. We already have a lot of problems in our weed spectrum with resistance to a lot of our herbicides. We even have less modes of action of fungicides to work with, so diseases could generate resistance really quickly. Soybeans, we've already seen frog eye leaf spot basically doesn't even see a lot of our QOI or strobilurin fungicides. They're basically useless. And we don't want to put that kind of pressure on some of these corn diseases. We can still manage them as long as we're smart about it. So there's a lot of these 2 and even 3 modes of action fungicides that are a little more costly, but I think it's definitely the way I would probably consider going. If we make that decision to stick a plane in the air, we have also got some other management decisions that we can make. There's some insects out here. Of course, with this hot, dry weather, we've definitely had some spider mites show up in the lower part of the canopy. They haven't flared up to be really bad for the most part yet, but they're out here, and if we do turn the faucet back off, they could have an impact, and now we're going to get into this grain fill period where it's going to be even more detrimental if they are causing problems. So here's a picture of kind of the top of the leaf with what the spider mite damage kind of looks like, and then here's what the lower side of the leaf looks like, that same leaf. As these pictures are taken, this is kind of towards the lower part of the canopy, not a huge deal, but as they start working up towards that ear leaf, which they very easily could do, we could have some problems with them if we stay dry. We've got some insects that you might run out into a cornfield and see that really are out here, but they're probably not something worth attacking with an insecticide. They're not a problem. They're called a grape colopsis beetle is one that I'm seeing. Here's the beetle, and then the damage that it's doing, it's feeding on the leaves, but typically we don't see enough damage where we're really going to have to worry about those too much, but you will see them and they may alarm you, but they're not a real target that we're going to worry about. The other thing we're seeing, and you maybe have driven by some fields that after we had some of this wind go through, blew some corn down, in a corn-on-corn scenario, we're seeing really heavy populations of corn rootworm beetles, especially the westerns here in the corn-on-corn scenario. Here's a picture of what they kind of look like. They have, you know, stripes. They have different, they're not always the same exact color, but they kind of have this body style, this striping pattern. Something that we need to kind of be aware of, that they're there. They're out here in these fields right now, and my concern on these corn-on-corn fields, if you dig up some of these, they've got some severe feeding, even on our Smart Stacks and some of our traded, our chrome type products. They've overwhelmed our traits. We've used those traits long enough year after year in some of these fields that we're going to have to start adapting to some new management strategies potentially. But what are they possibly doing now? If there's rootworm feeding, we really can't do anything about that. That damage is done. They're starting to emerge into these fields as beetles, but if we're going to go back to corn again, I think it's worth killing those beetles now, because those beetles are going to go back in the soil and lay eggs, and we're trying to cut the population so we have a little less risk for next year. They hatch and emerge for probably a month or better, so we're not going to be able to kill all the emerged females, but anything we knock out is going to help for the population potential for next year. The other thing to watch for on those is, as these silks emerge, they really would prefer to be around silks. That's what they want to feed on. And I've got a picture here, and here's what that ear looks like if you can see it, and here's more of a close-up view. They're clipping silks off of these plants. This pollen has not started to shed here yet, so I'm concerned, and that is a problem sometimes, especially this year. One other aspect of this that concerns me is there's very few fields that are a nice even emergence this year. There's a lot of this, you know, multiple size plants out there. There's going to be silks coming out for a longer period of time, and they're not all going to pollinate at the same time, which isn't ideal. But to manage that, some of these are going to get hit really hard. If there's a 20% of the field has silks out and hasn't been pollinated, and those beetle emergence really get strong, they're going to come out and clip those silks off potentially. And if you clip the silks off, obviously pollination is going to struggle. So if we can knock those beetles out, that would be quite helpful on that. But I guess we can always throw an insecticide in. It's not even a bad idea if we're going up in the air with a plane to throw some, you know, maybe some boron, some micronutrients in. They're a cheap ride along, something to consider, especially if you have a good looking field. But let's make sure we know what we're targeting here. I don't see any corn aphids yet. That's been a problem in northwest Iowa for a number of years now, but they typically will come later. Maybe we want to use a little higher rate of an insecticide, hopefully get some residual. Having a lot of residual help is maybe overly optimistic in some cases, but it's not going to hurt anything to target that, because we really don't want to have to hit these fields twice if we don't have to. Some of these corn-on-corn fields with a lot of beetle pressure, we are going to hit them twice to knock out more beetles, because we've seen that be successful helping drop that population in the past, and it's just a management decision we have to make. So I guess be aware of what's in your field. We've got a valuable crop out here. Let's make sure we manage it, and let's try and control what we can control as best we can. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.